Let me tell you something, alright? There is something extraordinary to me about the idea of gamers. When I was in middle school, gamers were supposed to be the cringy nerds who didn't really fit into the majority of the cliques that we're used to seeing. Too antisocial to fit in with the socialites, too inactive to fit in with the jocks, too nerdy to fit in with the normal crowd, but not quite nerdy enough to be among the studious. Gamers became a new culture that oftentimes melded with the weird art kids or the socially inept, like the Yu-Gi-Oh players and anime enjoyers. And I speak with experience, I was all of these. So I want you to imagine my fucking surprise when I realize, and one day it just hits me like a bullet train, that gamers have moved up in this social hierarchy. You don't ask people if they play games necessarily, you ask them what kind of games they play. And that's pretty nice. Maybe it's because I'm not forced to associate with the people from all walks of life, like I was in high school and prior, and so I naturally just gravitate towards the group of people who eat, sleep, and shit games. But I think it's actually been great for my social skills. I've met my very best friends through games, or through talking about games. But, like most things, as the culture evolves and becomes more accessible to the general public, the divide between casual gamers and absolute sweat cryptids grows ever still. Now, this wouldn't be a problem if the tryhards would just stay in their fucking lane! There are actual people who complain about others not following the meta or not being good enough, to the point where they are willing to kick or even report the poor bastard unfortunate enough to have logged on that day.
I'm gonna kick this guy for not playing how I want him to play. That'll show him!
Can you imagine coming home from your grueling 9-to-5 job at the local mineshaft after a shitty day, just wanting to unwind and play a game, then getting flamed and kicked because you panicked and popped it all early when a wild fiddlestick salsa danced out of some bushes and rearranged your body parts alphabetically, and you know some motherfucker is waiting in chat to call you out.
You died in my game!
Oh my god.
Almost been planted.
The amount of times I've been threatened to get, or just straight up have been kicked, for trying different metaguns during a man versus machine match is absolutely outstanding. I've been reported for not sticking to the meta. That's another thing that I absolutely despise. Metas. I gotta say, when you try and create a balanced video game with several classes, weapons, or ways to play, and a meta is still somehow created, you have failed as a game developer. It's no longer balanced. Sure, different playstyles and weapons should have been more effective in different situations, but when you essentially make it useless to play anything but a strict set of guidelines, people feel discouraged from exploring the game. Why would I want to play anything else other than the winning pick? Alright, let me rephrase that. What I mean to say is that metas should be used as helpful tips and tricks, not regarded as the standard. I shouldn't have to worry about losing the game just because I didn't stick to the status quo of the current update. That's the point, I believe, at which you failed at game development. For these specific kinds of games, at least. I have a love-hate relationship with games like League. I want to try unconventional methods and explore the wide catalog of items, runes, and champions provided to me, mixing and matching to figure out what works best for me and my playstyle, but it's essentially become impossible unless you get a full crew who are on the same page. Seriously, every time I pick a champion, there's always that one dweebus who sends me a page on the exact runes and items I have to get for this character, down to specifically what moves I can level up at any time. Why even give me the illusion of customizability at that point? Just lock me into this roller coaster and send me on my way like Overwatch does. On one hand, you could argue that the game is all about your reaction time and how well you can handle a multitude of situations with your given loadout in comparison to the other jabroni in the same role across the map, but that's just so boring. Maybe I want to play a healer that can absolutely dominate my lane, or trick my enemies by playing a character that's supposed to have good AP but instead has gnarly physical damage. But that just can't happen because you get immediately called a troll build and the mob rallies to report you. Don't get me wrong, I understand why it upsets people. Some games are investments of time and can take hours to complete, and games with such limited people on your team with such detrimental roles becomes absolutely infuriating when it seems somebody else is dragging you down by not taking the game seriously. All of a sudden, you're looking down the barrel of a 30-minute game that you know you're going to lose because of this person. But every game just becomes so monotonous. It's the same over and over. Buy this item, upgrade this ability at this level. I feel like Riot's cold fist is shoved up my ass and puppeting my every move. And I genuinely think the upkeep of meta is a huge part of what makes this game so toxic. I remember reaching a pivotal point in my Pokemon career where I wanted to play competitively, but realized that I couldn't use the Pokemon that I had grown to love so much because it's not in the meta. I would simply lose if I gave it a shot. And so now I see teams running essentially the same few Pokemon over and over, and the same skill set, the same moves, and that honestly crushed me as a kid. I no longer wanted to play competitive Pokemon. I felt like I lost my individuality, or that going in with an honest try would leave me embarrassed. Granted, I recognize that it's most likely impossible to completely balance over... how many is there? Over 1,000 Pokemon? But I'd still like to see a more diverse pool introduced rather than the same few Pokemon per tournament. Then there are games like Bloons, a game we've all played or heard about at least once in our life. Place down the monkeys to stop the balloons from reaching the end. Simple. And yet there's a wide variety of monkeys you can use and upgrade down different skill trees. Of course, some choices are better than others in certain situations or maps, but it won't necessarily make or break the game. You're free to explore choices and mix and match. It makes the game feel like I have control of my very own playstyle and my roles. And I love talking to others to compare how we would go about setting up our ideal map placements. Could you imagine how boring it would be if we all had to choose the same monkey with the same skills and the same places just to win? There's no game at that point. It's just nothing. And I know, there technically is a huge meta in this game, but I don't feel pressured to play it that way. And maybe it's because there's no direct way to chat with other players, and so I can't get flamed for making the wrong decision. But it's become much more of a pleasant experience, without sacrificing the original excitement of the challenge. I truly believe that games are meant to be explored and not always figured out. Having fun is the most important thing about a game, and just people forget that. They get lost in trying to min-max or automate farms or stick to the meta that individuality becomes non-existent. Metas make the individual players moot and snuff out all forms of experimentation and creative solutions to both simple and abstract problems. Sometimes I think about how TF2 would turn out if it was played strictly to how it was meant to be played. There would be no sentry jumping engineers, uber taunting combat medics, fat scouts, or trollgers. It's what makes the game alive and breathing. Always remember that there's no wrong way to play a game, unless you're no longer having fun. Obviously, I'm not saying to go into high-stakes competition and decide that you want to invent a new genre of fuckery right there on the spot, but absolutely do not be afraid to load up a normal game and try something new. Even if you're up against all odds and people are telling you that it's just not going to work, you gotta keep going at it. If you enjoy doing it despite losing, and trust me, you will lose. Again and again and again and again and again and again. Just keep going and you will become good at it, because you may have lost but you haven't been defeated. You'll find a way. A little at a time, if you so please. Whether it's buying a different item in the league shop or going balls out melee only Boston Basher Scout on your first playthrough, don't let anyone scare you into playing a certain way, and only that. That is how you truly lose at a video game.
The fear of the shit love for people that are idolized, hideous and difference and coming out of sight. So here's a little tip so you can see what I see. The old dogs, old tricks, triple N mentality. Nobody trying to link with you, you're wasting your breath. But if you can't join them, you can always beat them to death. You got it? You get like a hero, but we getting kinda weird because no one really knows if we just play it always serious. Fuck the way they cheer at us, stemming from the fear of us. Still keep it downright delirious. Also, spaced out, chasing